This is going to be worth it, I promise you. Welcome to Comic Artist Pro Secrets. My name is Ethan Van Sciver. I am your host and artist for DC Comics, and right now I've got a very, very big artist slash writer for DC Comics and Image Comics, and I want to introduce you to him. He's been a friend of mine for a long time. I've known Tim since the beginning of my own career, when he was still a young man. And now that we're both old men, I want to introduce you to the great Tim Seeley.
Cheers. Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it.
What are you drinking?
Sunday is wine. It's wine night, man. Sunday is Merlot. You know, that's just how it is. It's the wind down. You know, you beer and whiskey on Friday and Saturday, and then wine. I
love it. Now, I wish you had told me that. I would have gone ahead and opened a nice bottle of something. I've got a ton of wine.
Fanta,
but wine,
a nice bottle of Fanta.
Of Fanta. Well, listen, I'm trying to set an example for the children. I really am. I mean, this is what I have to drink right here.
That's what I should be doing. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, I'm a comic book artist for DC Comics. I draw superheroes. We don't drink, like, ostensibly, we don't drink alcohol.
Yeah. Every comic pro drinks because they have to kill the pain inside.
Well, Tim, I'm glad to have you on here. I want to ask you a few questions, if you don't mind. This is going to feel like an inquisition.
All right, shoot.
An interrogation. But these people need to know more about you. And frankly, I need to know more about you because though I've known you an awfully long time and I have enjoyed your work tremendously, I don't know very much about you as a comic book fan. And that's where I want to start.
Sure.
Because I think most people that work in comics, I mean, you would almost have to, right? If you work in comic books, you are going to start out as a big-time comic book fan.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a requirement.
Yeah. I mean, who else would do this? Who else would put themselves?
Right, exactly. Yeah.
So tell me about young Tim Seeley and discovering superheroes or comic books.
So when I was 5 or 6, I was super into the electric company used to have Spider-Man cartoons on their educational show. Little it wasn't cartoons actually, it was live action. And so that I kind of fell in love with Spider-Man. And my parents had ordered me for Christmas one year was like Mego came out with these little action figures, and mine was mixed up. It had Spider-Man, Robin, Green Goblin, and Hulk in the Spider-Mobile. So I was like really curious about these guys. And we went camping one time, and it rained all weekend. So my mom brought me to the camp store, and I got 2 comics. It was a Spider-Man comic, issue 189, I believe, or no, 239, and a Hulk comic, which I've never found again. It was like Hulk and the Leader in a circus. But I just fell in love. I was 5, I think. I couldn't really read. I had my mom read me these comics over and over. In fact, I still have the Amazing Spider-Man, and it fell apart. I read it so many times. I had my mom read it. I learned to read on comics, and then I grew up in the country, like a small town in Wisconsin. We didn't have a comic store until I was like 13. So a big ritual for us was we went to the grocery store, and my mom would go do her shopping. My brothers and I would sit on the floor and try to read every comic we could, and my mom let us pick up a couple. So, for the first...
Well, wait, you sat on the floor of the supermarket reading comics?
Yeah, yep. And
like in a magazine rack? What was it, a spinner rack or what?
Yeah, it was a magazine rack in the 29 Super in Weston, Wisconsin. And, we just, read a big pile of comics. And then my mom would let us get a few. You try to, read the stuff you didn't buy. And then you would try to, get a couple things. And,
what did you prefer?
We were always,
what did you prefer?
It was superhero stuff was what I kind of came up on at the same time as Mad Magazine and Cracked. I love that stuff, the humor stuff. So it was both. It was the funny comics and superhero stuff. And I was huge into Marvel stuff, and then Superman and Batman were kind of my DC characters. And then by the time I was a teenager, my dad had grown up reading comics, so every once in a while he would buy Vampirella or Heavy Metal magazine, and he would read it and then just give it to me after he was done. So that kind of got me started on sci-fi and horror stuff. So I think that's kind of why I've always had like a kind of mixed genre fandom, because I started out that way. It was about the comics. It didn't really matter what they were. But yeah, that was kind of the start of something. I remember, being like the only kid I knew into comics when I was in grade school, but I was making them at the same time, so, but I had a weird thing as a kid where I thought I would get in trouble for doing Marvel and DC characters, so I would just make up my own.
What do you mean you get in trouble for drawing Marvel?
Some weird kid thing where I thought if I did Marvel and DC comics, they'd find out, and I don't know, it was weird.
And sue you?
Yeah, right. It's like some weird kid misunderstanding of how things work. So I was always making my own characters. So, and obviously they were kind of knockoff stuff, but for me, like, comics always was something that you did everything. Like I was writing these things and drawing them and coloring with crayon, and that, I think that's also kind of how I ended up becoming a writer and an artist, because I just didn't know there was a difference. It was just making shit. So yeah, but I did like weird superhero stuff when I was a kid. Weird comics.
Tell me something about it. Tell me one of your weird superhero comics.
Well, so the one that I did pretty consistently was called, his name was Gripper. And I got the name, my grandpa had some work gloves, and it had a guy climbing the side of a mountain with these gloves on, and it said Gripper gloves. So I had made up this character called the Gripper, who had gripper gloves, which allowed him to climb anything, kind of like Spider-Man. But he also stretched like Mr. Fantastic, but because he was a cyborg, like the Terminator, because it was like, a combination of weird stuff. And then I also did a comic called Very, Very Stupid Comics, which was my Mad magazine. And it was like these little strips, like humor strips. There was one called The Ninja, which was like a ninja who'd always like grab some special weapon and it would be the wrong thing. It was just like these weird, weird humor comics, I guess, because I always thought stuff would be funny, So
did you show them to your friends at school, or who were they for? Were they for your family, or just yourself, or for your friends?
I mean, my brothers would read my comics, I guess, or they would say they would, and my parents. And then, like when I was like 10 or 11, I started bringing them to school, especially Very, Very Stupid Comics, which I would pass around to all my friends, Yeah. And every once in a while they would contribute a strip, so I'd get like, some a guest artist, like my Sergio Aragonis or whatever would come in and do a pinch hit, a strip or whatever. But yeah, so that's kind of, it was just always like there. I don't know. It was such a like instant and profound love. I think that's the way comics get some people, like you just, I know you're the same. And then, when I was like in my teens, I started really, it was kind of, by the time I was a teenager, it was the sort of black and white and indie comics boom, and then going on to the Image Comics birth. So I got really into like indie stuff, so I would go on these like hunts whenever we'd go on vacation to find whatever local black and white zines I had and whatever. And that's how I ended up with Cyberfrog. Was we were in Ohio visiting my uncle, and we went to a comic shop, and I found all the Hulk Heroes books were there. And so I got the first issue of Cyberfrog off the rack. So there you go, man. That's how I kind of got into that shit.
But that's how I got to Cyberfrog. I was doing the same thing you were doing. I was really into the black and white indies, and all the small press stuff was way more important to me than what was going on in the mainstream. So it's funny, we kind of collided. We did the same we had the same interest at the same time.
Well, I mean, and I think part of it was, at the time, the 90s were not great for Marvel and DC Comics. There wasn't a lot of really great stuff coming out of it. So but then at the same time, I could get, Scud the Disposable Assassin, and there's this crazy good, really original black and white indie stuff coming out at that time. And then I was doing the Daniel Clowes books, like 8 Ball and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, so I think all those things kind of fused to make whatever style I have today is just, I'm a Frankenstein of all the weird shit I liked in all those different eras.
We all are. That's kind of how our styles kind of come about. I mean, you find the stuff that you love, the stuff that had the greatest impact on you at a certain age, and that age is like 13 to maybe 17, and that kind of is the birth of your style and your outlook. I mean,
for sure.
So were you reading comics all through your teens?
I did. I never stopped. You know, my taste changed, but I never, you know, like I discovered girls and everything, but that didn't change me liking comics. You know, I think for a lot of people, they move on when they're kids and from when they're kids to when they're teenagers. I didn't, and I was making a ton of comics in my teenage years. Like that's I think where a lot of the ideas I kind of go to now come from. This shit I made up when I was a kid. And I just had these folders full of ideas that I would go to, you know?
Yeah. All right. So what was your first, what was your first comic book that was actually published then? At what point? And how did that come to be?
First one I ever got published when I was 16. Well, shit, no, I guess I have one. There's two that came around sort of a similar time. When I was 16, I sent in to this, it was called Fifth Panel Comics. They were an independent company out of Michigan. And I found their address, and I sent them this comic I did called Cyberfrog. And like, I don't know, 2 years later or something, or I think I was like 13 or 14, or maybe somewhere around there. And then years later, they sent me a copy. They're like, "Hey, we published your story." So,
oh my gosh,
it was like this.
Thanks for telling me.
Yeah, it was a terrible comic. I'm super ashamed of it. But and then when I was 16, I met an independent guy who did a comic book store signing in my town. He did this book called The Adventures of Monkey, which is about a sock puppet monkey hero. And I met this guy, and like he was self-publishing, and he said he was super nice to me, and he gave me a backup in his book. So I did an 8-page backup, which was like the biggest deal for me of all time, you know, to get published. This was the Fifth Panel stuff was on little zine stuff, but The Adventures of Monkey was on like newsprint with like a photo cover. I was like blew my fucking mind, you know, at the time. So it was like a big deal.
Now, so how old were you? So in 1996, I had Cyberfrog out, the first issue of Harris Comics Cyberfrog, and there's actually a letter printed from you in that issue.
Yeah.
So, and then later on, as you remember, I think it was like Cyberfrog #0, which was the last issue of Cyberfrog that Harris Comics published. I had this weird contest going on, create a character, and I'm going to have Cyberfrog beat him up. And you sent in,
Mutant Bird, which was, I had done a strip at my college the first year called Big Small Town. Actually, was it before that? It might have been before that. But it was about, it was a biographical strip about going to college and living in my small town, Wisconsin. And it starred Mutant Bird and this character named Junkie Kielbasa, which is a stoner sausage. And basically it was just like slice of life shit. And I sent in Mutant Bird, and you called me and said, "Hey man, you won the contest. I'm gonna have Cyberfrog kill your character." And I was like, "Holy shit, this is amazing!" And so I was in college at the time, and I remember, and then we talked about it, and like you had this big plan, and it was gonna be fucking great. And then obviously the book never came out, but when I saw you at a convention, you gave me my prize, which was a page of Cyberfrog versus Creed that I still have actually.
Nice.
And then we talked about doing something together. We talked on the phone. You were living in Portland at the time, and you were like, "Hey man, you can draw and write. Would you want to do a horror comic with me?" I was like, "Fuck yeah!" So I remember we talked about doing a book together, and then you got a call from DC that said, "Hey, we want to make you our golden boy," and you were like, "Oh, fuck this," and you dropped that comic like a hot ass.
That's not how it happened, but the story of how that happened is detailed very, very carefully on my site, but on this channel on Comic Artist Pro Secrets. But yeah, I mean, listen, the indie scene is very sketchy. It's like one day you have something going, and the next day you don't have something going. And I desperately reached out to DC Comics, like I need security.
Yeah, totally.
And, and they kind of took me in. But man, I miss it because your drawing of Mutant Bird was awesome. And what made me laugh is there was a little word balloon coming out of his head that said, I want Cyberfrog to whoop my birdie ass. And I still laugh when I see that drawing. So if anybody wants to, it's in Cyberfrog #0. It's in the letters column. And you could already see that Tim was super talented and was going to go somewhere. I mean, that's kind of why I reached out to him and said, we should jam way back when. I mean, I knew you were going to be. You didn't need the Cyberfrog contest.
and the thing is, that should have told me everything, because I made this really weird ass character, and that's kind of what I did. And then I spent the rest of my career making weird ass shit that sort of barely is mainstream. Like that's me. Like I'm barely sort of hanging on the bottom of the mainstream.
Well, now you're thoroughly mainstream. So, okay, so let's talk about, so you got your start, you got published here and there. That's a really fun thing about the indie scene, is the idea of sort of jamming with other artists who are just on the precipice, just on the brink of breaking in. And it sounds like you did a little bit of that with like, hey, I'm going to do an 8-page story in your anthology book that's selling not very well. But it doesn't matter. You're seeing print.
It doesn't matter, yeah.
It's so fun.
Part of it too. Yeah, I mean, and I think like those, when those early, this was like the 90s, like late 90s, where there was, there was a beginning of a big dip, right? Like the industry was going through about to go through some really bad times between like 97 and 2001 or so. So nobody was doing it for the money, but like if you were like me in 97, I was 20 years old or whatever, and I could get away with not making any money. I was working at a power plant in the summer and, whatever, like it didn't matter. So I could just make weird comics and I met a lot of people that way. So, like after I met you, then I met Josh Blaylock, who eventually did G.I. Joe, and all these people I would meet at conventions are people that I still know. So that part of the industry I think was important for me. It was really pivotal.
Were you living at home when you were 20 still, with your parents?
No, I was in college. So I guess in the summers I would stay at home. But I was in college. Clare, Wisconsin, living in a total fucking shitty borough house, and so I just like do my comics. My teacher started letting me do my comics as class assignments. So my last year in college, the stuff I did, I got credit for, and then I interned at Marvel when I was 21.
Now wait a second, I want to rewind a bit. What do you mean, do your comics as an assignment?
So I started to write and draw stuff. I started doing Love Bunny and Mr. Hell, actually, which was another weird ass
Love Bunny and Mr. Hell.
Yeah, which came out through Image eventually. But I did it as an assignment. Like they would let me, I'd have to turn in 5 pages every 2 weeks, and I would get a grade as my final college project. Like University of Wisconsin Eau Claire let me do that, which is pretty awesome. Which then they gave me credit that summer. I interned at Marvel, and they gave me credit for that too. So I learned a lot about comics and also saw the dark side of it because it was Marvel going through bankruptcy.
Oh my God!
So it was like it was like the sad part of Marvel. I saw the worst days of Marvel's history, basically.
So you were just breaking in right when Cyberfrog was ending at that point, and I remember a lot of long faces because Marvel had bought Heroes, which was a distributor, and people forecasted the doom of the entire comic book industry. So just for those of you who are watching this and who are hearing things about the doom of the comic book industry, we've been hearing this for decades. I mean, every 10 years, the industry is going to implode.
When I was working at Marvel, one of the editors said by 2001, Marvel would no longer produce comic books. That was like a thing that they believed at the time.
Yeah.
Which is crazy, but it's always been this way. It's I think partially because it's such a passionate fan base, and I think it's also a constantly changing industry. Like because we're fast, we can change fast. Mm-hmm. It causes us to be ahead of the curve, I think, and we see the possible doom before anybody else does.
Right.
I think that's what freaks people out about comics, in general.
But then somebody comes in and changes everything. I mean, in Marvel's case, it was Joe Quesada, who came in and changed the whole publishing plan of Marvel Comics, as well as the idea of selling their properties to companies like Sony for movies, and that was just a huge influx of cash. So a smart business decision plus a new creative energy kind of pulled Marvel out of the gutter for a little while. We're hoping that's going to happen again, aren't we? Right now.
Well, I mean, the thing is, Marvel's problem at the time when I was working there was not that they weren't selling comics, because they were. The problem is that they had been bought by another company, and there was all this it was basically just like corporate crap. It was Marvel was selling comics fine, but they didn't have the capital because they were sort of stuck in this weird middle, like being purchased between two different companies and all this crap. And I remember that they had to, like, at some point they had to sue their freelancers to get their money back, which is crazy.
Forgot about
That's,
that.
you know, yeah, but it was weird. But I mean, yeah, again, you know, like I was there as an intern the day when I heard that X-Men was finally moving it forward. You know, like I remember that going around the office, they're like, holy crap, they're going to make this X-Men movie finally. So it was weird times, man. It was crazy stuff.
That was right. Yeah, right when that X-Men movie came out, and then I went over to go work for Marvel, and they were saying, "Hey, we're going to put the X-Men in jackets."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh no, I don't want to draw the X-Men from the '80s. No, different X-Men."
You drew some nice jackets, though.
It actually turned out to be a good thing. I mean, Frank Coyle's a hell of a designer, and now I kind of wish they'd go back to those jackets, to be honest with you.
Sure.
So you were interning at Marvel during all this? What was that like?
It was weird. I was an intern. So I'd applied to be an art intern, and you know, I thought I was a ringer for doing the art stuff, and they turned me down. I was like, oh. Then I got a call.
What does that mean? Wait, back up. Explain yourself.
Okay, so they had an art intern program where you could be a bullpen intern, and you would work with the art director and stuff like that. I didn't really know what it entailed, but that's what I applied for. And they turned me down, and you know, after I sent my portfolio and everything, so I thought I was out, and then I got a call from editorial, and they're like, we actually liked your portfolio. Do you want to work in Spider-Man editorials? Like, yes, that would be amazing. Like, you know, at the time I was like, everything comes full circle. I'm working in the Spider-Man stuff. So I ended up being an editorial intern, but it was like, it was a rough era of Spider-Man stuff. It was like they were trying to come out of the Clone Saga, and they were doing Chapter 0 with, or was it Chapter 0 with John Byrne and stuff. So it was kind of, you know, but Marvel Knights was going on at the same time. Joe Quesada and Jimmy were in the office all the time. But it was interesting, and it was stressful and scary. And I was from a town of 1,400 people, and I'm going to New York City and living in Brooklyn in a, you know, intern hotel, and it was hard, man. It was like, but it was a great character building thing. I learned tons about comics. I learned a lot about scheduling editorial, which was actually really valuable. And I kind of learned, I think I'm a writer more than anything as far as that goes, because I saw the production schedules and what artists had to do, and I still did it, but I knew now, you know, that this was it's a hard job.
Mm-hmm. It's a grind.
It's a grind, yeah.
Yeah. Do you draw anything right now, by the way?
I'm doing covers for Hellblazer. I'm doing little stuff here and there. I do covers for Hack Slash. But yeah, I haven't done monthly pages in a while. Like I did a little bit for Batman Eternal and stuff, but I found out, so this is kind of a schedule thing I figured out, is you can draw one book a month and write one book a month. It doesn't have to be the same book, but you can do that. But if you write 2 books, you cannot draw a book. But you can't live on writing 2 books, so you got to write at least 3. So basically, it's just this weird sort of in between trap. I can't exactly do all the stuff I want to do because just the schedule doesn't really allow for it. And that's just the way comics is built. And I've never lined up. I've never lined up the schedule where I could write and draw something. When I was working at Marvel for freelance stuff, they offered me a chance to write and draw something, and I could do it for 3 issues. And then they wanted me to do another thing, and I couldn't do it. Just couldn't work the schedule. Because then I was doing Hack Slash, and then I was doing another book that I was writing. I can't remember what it was, Wishblade maybe. But I just couldn't. I couldn't do 2 books writing and draw another book. I just couldn't do it. So it was just too hard to pull off. I wish someday somebody will offer me a writing and drawing gig at the same time, and it'll work out. Maybe it'll happen.
So. I don't see why that hasn't happened already, or that you just create something for yourself. But all right, so I want to go back to you interning at Marvel. Now, what happened to make you jump from interning in the art department to your first paid assignment at Marvel Comics? How did that go down?
Oh man, so there was a bunch of years in there because I interned at Marvel, and then I went back, finished off my college degree. Then my first job out of college, I got a job at a children's book company as an illustrator, staff illustrator.
We're the same human being. I swear to God, we did everything the same.
Really, I remember I was talking about how this lined up almost the same. So I worked at this company called Lerner Books. It was a pretty good job, but I still want to do comics. So at night I would do comics. I got a job from Avatar, drawing this titty book of theirs called Lookers. It was like, so I draw, you know, like kids stuff all day, and then I go home and draw titties all night, which is, you know, a perfect symbol of anyone's comic book career, really. But then I ended up working at Josh Blaylock, who I met at conventions, called me up and said, "Hey, I just got the rights to do G.I. Joe. I can't believe they gave me the rights to this." And he's like, "I need help." So I ended up, you know, helping him out, and then moving from Minneapolis to Chicago to work at Devil's Due. And I worked there for 4 years, just exclusively. I didn't work for anybody else. And then
Devil's Due was doing the G.I. Joe books and the Transformer books.
Yeah.
Was that Pat Lee's company?
No, it's Josh Blaylock. That was Dreamwave, was the other company. We had crossovers with those guys. We knew them, and because we kind of started at the same time doing the same thing. But yeah, so that was like I worked there for 4 or 5 years, and then, you know, I did Hack Slash there, and I did a bunch of stuff, and then they went out of business, and I had to sink or swim, so I sent a bunch of stuff to Marvel, and Jordan White, who had read my Hack Slash stuff, hired me to do some Deadpool and some, you know, X-Men stuff. So mostly as an artist at the time, and then so, you know, between me interning at Marvel and actually getting hired to do stuff at Marvel was like 7 years, I think, between them, maybe, you know. So and I, you know, but at the time I was working at Devil's Due, I was totally content to do. I get to write my own book, and I get to draw. It was fun. It was, you know, it was perfect way to start your career, and I learned a ton. So, you know, it worked out pretty well. And I didn't have to go right to freelancing. And, you know, there's no security in freelancing. It's terrifying. So that was a big part of it too. Was that, you know, I started out with security, and then was prepared when everything fell out from underneath me.
Yeah. Freelancing is good because you have freedom to do whatever you want. I mean, you can bounce from Marvel to Devil's Due to, you know, Avatar if you'd like to.
Yeah.
But
yeah, it makes you trade security for it. You trade. I mean, part of your, and you know this, but 50% of your job is not working. It's looking for work. You know, so that's the part you trade for that. So. And
once you sign a contract somewhere, that looking for work becomes looking for the right project.
Right.
At that company, and you got to kind of scratch around and figure out what's going on, or invent your own stuff, which is something I've always kind of liked to do at DC. Are you exclusive for DC now?
I am. I'm exclusive through June. So, yeah, that was my first exclusive contract too, and it's good. I actually really like. Being exclusive at DC, I think, is probably it's the best way to go if you're going to do superhero stuff. You know.
You miss G.I. Joe?
Sometimes. You know what? I wasn't a G.I. Joe fan as a kid. My little brother was, and we used to pick on him because my other brother and I were He-Man fans. We used to be like, G.I. Joe we're so gay. And now I look at He-Man, I'm like, you idiot. He-Man was so much gay.
You missed the mark there.
But we were like little kids, so of course we were horribly homophobic and idiotic. But then when I worked on G.I. Joe, I really kind of understood it more. And I really got into this stuff. The things that I loved in G.I. Joe were the things that the other fans didn't really like. Like, I loved Cobra Law, and I loved the weird stuff. Like, you know, the Cobra Law was the underground alien race they fought, which I loved. I thought that was so cool. But you know, like, I did come to love it. I love the Larry Hama stuff. I love that it's just a weird fusion of ninja movies and 80s action movies. And yeah, it's cool stuff. It's a unique property for sure.
I was more of a Transformers guy. I didn't like He-Man or G.I. Joe. Yeah.
You know,
they had the best names and the best concepts. I mean, the idea of vehicles transforming to robots blew my mind at age 11. I mean, that was.
It keeps working. My nephew is 4.5, and he's obsessed with Transformers. I had nothing to do with this, but I wore a Transformers shirt one day, and my nephew came up to me and went, "You know Transformers?" And I was like, "Yeah, I know all about it." He's like, "Do you know who Starscream is?" I was like, I do know who Starscream is. I can tell you all about Starscream. He's the traitor. He's the yeah. It was pretty funny.
He's Cobra Commander, essentially. Yeah, exactly, same voice.
Same guy. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was I thought that was fascinating to watch, that generational thing that's occurred, you know, with all his 80s properties that they hang on, you know. I guess it's like Batman from when we were kids, because our parents knew who Batman was, obviously. So
good ideas last. I mean, I don't know. I'm surprised Turtles kind of keeps hanging on, although I feel like it doesn't. I mean, sometimes it works. I don't think it catches on with little kids the way that it kind of has clung to our hearts as adults. Do you think kids like the Turtles as much as we do?
they do. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I watch. There's something about some of those things that no matter if you can make something that can be turned into different variations, like if you can redo Turtles every 2 years and totally change it and it still works, then you have something, right? That's why Batman works. That's why Superman works. That's why it's like if things are capable of changing and keeping the soul of what they are, then they're good properties, you know. So that's why you can do a million different versions of Batman, and he always holds up.
All right, so check this out. Did you have any sisters in the house
No,
growing up?
two brothers, two brothers.
Two brothers. So you, even though you're close to my age, you're probably not familiar with girl toy properties the way I am, or are you?
I'm up there now. I mean, I know She-Ra like the back of my hand. I know a couple other things.
She-Ra is not a girl's toy property. She-Ra is a girl
fair.
in a boy's toy property.
Sure. Okay.
I'm talking about Rainbow Bright.
Sure.
I'm talking about the Care Bears. I'm talking about Strawberry Shortcake. I mean, I might even be talking about like Shirt Tails. But definitely the Smurfs and the Snorks and all of them. I mean, are you into that? Are you digging my scene here?
Oh man, hey, you know, I at least saw that stuff, but we were of the age in the 80s where if you showed any interest in that, anything that was pink, you were gonna live to regret it. You know, especially I lived in a small town in the country, like that wasn't gonna go well. So I avoided that stuff, even when I was interested in it. Even when I wanted She-Ra toys, I was like, no, I can't. People will know about it.
Yeah,
like,
but I have 4 sisters, so it was all over the house. I have 4 sisters. Now, I know all about those girls' toys properties because I grew up with them. And so what I'm saying is, you and me in this day and age, when things have changed, by the way, these properties are languishing. I don't know what's going on with them. I saw a Rainbow Bright comic book recently, and I was like, oh, cool. I want you and me to get together and unify all of those girl properties into one universe. Now, Tim, you can help me out with this because you're drinking, and I know that you're probably on the right wavelength, maybe right about now, to talk to me about making a Game of Thrones style universe in which there are different lands. Rainbow Bright is kind of like, picture Rainbow Bright on her horse. I don't know what the horse's name is, but somebody in the chat will know. Riding the horse with like a rainbow sword, okay, leading an army of like all of her against villains. Now, you know, there's another whole like kind of dimension in which the Care Bears exist to manipulate the emotions of children. And that's what they do, because this is a whole other world that exists somewhere else in this kind of alternate dimension that only kids understand and know about. So these warring factions, you'd have the Smurf village, you know, you'd have the Snorks in this kind of undersea world. Like a little child at home would be angry because his mom sent him to his room, you know, and so without dinner, so he's in his bed like, and Grumpy Bear's like right above him, like lightning everywhere coming out of his eyes. And
so I guess my question is, where's Jem fit into this? Because that's the one I want to know where Jem and the Misfits just have the.
That's the G.I. Joe universe.
Sure, but if you're unifying the girls, I think you can. You're right. They do. They contain that same reporter character, right?
Well, I think Jem and the holograms exist in the G.I. Joe universe. So, like, if the Joes ever took like a night off and were out there partying somewhere, they might go see Jem and the holograms live. They just be on stage. And the G.I. Joe guys, they don't really care about the Misfits or any of the problems that the girls are having. But it's in the same world.
Right. Okay. Sure.
And maybe
so these have to be other stuff. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I can see that. I mean, yeah, she'd go for that kind of boring, you know, cleft jaw kind of guy. I can see it.
Well, maybe I'm wrong. Who would she date?
I mean, I mean, she was super into that synergy robot. Like, I just feel like she'd go straight for like Optimus Prime. Like, she'd date a robot.
Are you serious?
I think so. I think it's her thing. I think that's Jem's deal, man. She's like into machines. It's got
Do you
synergy.
think
Like
wait, do the Transformers exist in the same universe as G.I. Joe?
they did in the cartoon. Remember, because there was that episode where, man, we're gonna derail this whole thing. There's this episode of Transformers where they meet. There's a guy called Old Snake, and he's like Cobra Commander when he's old.
Yeah.
In the cartoon, and like I think Flint and somebody else is in there too.
You're blowing my mind.
Yeah, I know. It's been a while, and I have had a few wines, but yes, there was a thing that connected them together.
So the Transformers came later. Like, so you're saying that like Old Snake was an old man at this point? So Cobra Commander was an old man?
If you'll recall, the G.I. Joe cartoon jumped ahead. Remember the original movie took place. The G.I. Joe movie took place in 2015. So it took place in a distant future.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and then when the cartoon jumped ahead, yeah, that's when they met Old Snake. Dude, I mean, you can take a deep Wikipedia dive and just like, this will keep you busy for the rest of the night. But I'm just telling you, that's what I remember.
This is our job.
Yeah, this is, and I did work on this stuff pretty intimately, so I do have some memories that are pretty well ingrained in there. There you go.
What about Mask? Now, is Mask, by the way, why wouldn't Mask be some like offshoot, like some special ops version of G.I. Joe? Why wouldn't they be like Black Ops, G.I. Joe Black Ops?
This is totally what IDW is doing now. So you are pitching their First Strike universe, basically.
Seriously?
Yeah. And that's how it is. As Mask is part of G.I. Joe and Cobra, the bad guys in Mask, which I can't remember their name, Hammer, I think. They're versions of
Venom.
Venom, that's it. I don't know why I didn't know that. But yeah, so you're pitching something that IDW was like, oh yeah, give us that sweet old nerd money because this is what they want.
All right, now here's what they haven't done yet that you and I could do. That would make them $1 million. All
right, deal.
Transformers. It's so obvious. Transformers versus Gobots. To the death.
Well, so Hasbro owns the Gobots now. And they bought it from, I think it was Tomy or something that owned it. They bought it in the early 2000s. And they used the name Gobots because the first Transformers my nephew got were called Gobots. And they made like a Leader 1 thing. But you're talking like old school 80s Gobots versus 80s Transformers.
Psykill, Leader 1.
Yeah.
Versus Optimus Prime and Megatron. I mean, like these two, like the most incredible like grudge match. Like these two alien races of robots are warring tribes essentially, to the point where, I mean, what do you think would happen? Would the Decepticons team up with the what are the evil Gobots called?
I don't know. Yeah, we should be better at this, but I don't remember. I think they were just called. Oh yeah, no, they had a name. But the whole thing you would want to play with is you want to have Leader 1 who is a jet fighting Starscream, right? That's what you want to see. That's what I want to see. But
was there a motorcycle in the Transformers?
There's a couple, but basically a motorcycle against the semi is like a really short fight. So yeah, I mean that's that's an easy one. But they do own it, so I mean you could pitch this tomorrow, man. If you weren't exclusive to DC, this is your thing right here. This could be your next job.
I'm just trying to help. This is all free advice from me. I would do Transformers versus the Gobots right away. But I would also go ahead and I would pick up all these girls' properties. I want Strawberry Shortcake. Now listen, Strawberry Shortcake, her universe, is peaceful and kind. They are not like the Rainbow Bright Warlord universe. Like
right.
I mean, that like she would come there and Strawberry Shortcake would be like, we're gardeners. This is what we do. We our world is full of delicious things to eat. We grow and we feed everyone. And you're cute and all, but we are not like you. We do not take up arms. And she's like, and Rainbow Bright's like, what about the Purple Pie Man? When are you going to do something about that fascist tyrant, the Purple Pie Man? And Strawberry Shortcake's like, well, we are peaceniks. We don't. And then Rainbow Bright could actually go and lead a war on the Purple Pie Man and his whole. I mean, because he's what the hell is wrong with Purple Pie Man?
Yeah, he was real creepy.
That guy's a pedophile. And I mean,
what's the name of your unified universe? Though this like, I feel like this has like it has legs, but it has to be. It's like war, you know, like the Cupcake Wars or something. Like it's like, you know,
What is it called? Cupcake Wars. That's interesting, but that's not all about.
I think
that
that's
would
a
only,
TV show actually right now where they cook off, you know, cupcakes probably. Yeah, I don't know, man. I think there's something to it. I feel like
I would read this.
yeah, yeah, yeah. The socio-political questions about like these worlds of kindness and goodness. Like what happens when everybody's nice to each other in different ways?
Like Strawberry Shortcake would be like Switzerland. They'd be like, you guys could be enjoying delicious things and beautiful, you know, things, and instead you're at war. I mean, Rainbow Bright would be the United States of America.
Wait, they're like, this is a planet? There's a whole planet of
yes, there's a whole planet that exists above the heads of children, like Earth's children. So only children, like actually, I don't even know if children are fully aware of it.
Yeah, but it's warping their lives to some degree.
It's shaping their lives. It's not necessarily warping them, but it is shaping them.
Sure.
And I would have Strawberry Shortcake go in. No, I would have Rainbow Bright go in and actually defeat toy lines that were unsuccessful from the 80s.
So like just Anson Boston things like screw that thing, just roll right over. Boglins, die, Boglins, you bastard. Yeah.
Boglins, yeah. I mean, things that didn't work out, like they would just go extinct, you know. And this is like something.
How many people are just walking out of this chat right now, just like horrified that
we have 0 people watching right now. No, I'm just kidding. We have a listen. We're gaining viewers, and I think people are inspired by this because these, you know, here's the thing about being a comic book artist or writer, a comic book creator. You're paid to think about this stuff all day long. All these notions that I think normal people consider to be childish or a waste of time. We are paid significant amounts of money. I make a pretty good living to do nothing but sit around and think about Green Lantern and what exists beyond Green Lantern and all this stuff. That's what I'm paid to do. I live in this special, magical little world, and so do you.
Yeah, no, that is it is very well. And then to try to shut off your nerd brain once you go into the rest of the world, you know, when I come home to my girlfriend and, you know, it's like I got to talk about normal stuff and I'm thinking about Jessica Cruz's character arc and what her ring is doing. Why is it talking? Like, just such a weird thing to come down from, you know. It's like that's kind of why writers end up being drunks. Really, they're like just trying to quiet the thing in your head that keeps screaming stupid stuff at you.
Well, all right, so you brought it up. Green Lanterns. How do you like it? What's it like working on Green Lanterns? Yeah,
it's great. Well, I think so. I didn't grow up as a Green Lantern guy. Like I wasn't as a kid a big fan. My DC stuff was like JLA and Batman and Superman stuff. So I think the hardest thing about working on Nightwing is I know it really well, and I also like the character a lot. So I had all these kind of preconceived ideas. But Green Lantern, especially this book, the plural Green Lanterns, it's kind of new. You can do a lot of new stuff. There's no set bad guys. There's no, you know, you've got the idea of the core behind you, and then, you know, I think to me the theme of the book is sort of it's these are the trainees, right? This is if the regular Green Lantern book that you draw is like Star Trek plus Indiana Jones, like they're the explorers and like the adventures. To me, this one is like Star Trek plus Spider-Man, right? They're like learning about responsibility. They're learning about being heroes. They're learning about, but they have to get shit on, right? Like their lives are ruined by being good guys in the same way that's Spider-Man's, you know, I think. So that's kind of what I've been trying to do with it. It's tons of fun, you know, just make up bad guys. One of my favorite things to do is make up new bad guys. So this book allows me tons of room to do that.
That's what you're going to do? You're going to invent a lot of new characters?
Yeah, and that was like something I wanted to do on Nightwing was, you know, bring something to it that wasn't there. Like give Nightwing his own Joker, his own arch enemy. And in Green Lanterns, you know, these characters, like Hal has great villains. You know, he's got Sinestro and Hector Hammond, and well, he's not a great bad guy, but he's a bad guy. But he's got this whole, and then the Rainbow Corps. All those characters are really interesting. But I think Jess and Simon are kind of a blank slate that way. There was tons of room for for original bad guys, which, you know, you can pick aspects of them to reflect off of, and that's what I'm doing. Like the issue that comes out this week, well, she kind of was introduced in 35, but I just wanted to make it entirely new bad guy. So I made this character, Singularity Jane, which is basically she's an evil lawyer, or just a regular lawyer because they're all evil, I guess. But yeah, so I'm just having a lot of fun with it. You know, I love cosmic shit. I grew up a big fan of Silver Surfer, and I love Guardians of the Galaxy, the version before the snarky Groot and Rocky Raccoon version. But I love that stuff. I love space shit. It's so unlimited, so creative, you know.
Was it hard picking up from Sam Humphries? What did he lay down that you appreciated or admired or wanted to carry through, and maybe what did you want to change?
What I definitely picked up is that Sam set up that it was partially a slice of life book. Like, I think that's what Sam's strength is people stuff, and just people doing jobs and living their lives. So I picked up on that, especially in the Jessica stuff. You know, that and this is a Jeff creation, Justice, but the idea that a character who has anxiety and who's afraid of everything, or to some degree fears everything, is the bravest person and has the most will because of that, totally makes sense to me, you know. So I loved that stuff, and I like that I think Jeff's conception of the book was that Jess and Simon didn't get along, and I think Sam came around to no, they get along really well. They need each other, in fact, and that I really wanted to pick up. And then as far as the only thing I kind of wanted to change was I didn't want to deal with the lore, and you know, like I think one of the things the Green Lantern books for a while, since you and Jeff did it, has really been heavily about the lore, like the history of the core and these other cores, the other colored rings, and going back to the origins and the, you know, and the stuff with the Balfunga and all that stuff, which is great, and people love it. But I don't want to do that right now. I want to go into a different. I think it's been a lot about the past to some degree, which is interesting, but I want to just be about the future, I think, for a while, you know, and come back to the lore stuff. But I was just really interested in, like, what do they do? Okay, yes, it's great that there's this huge backstory to the Lanterns and the core and literally a billion years of history, which is cool, but I just want to go, okay, well, what happens tomorrow? You know, that's kind of the approach I was going to take.
That's good. I mean, all the backstory stuff is now established for you. People know about it. If you want to build on it later, you always can. But pushing these characters forward. Jeff Johns told me early on, I kind of had a little bit of a choice, like which Green Lantern book I was going to draw. And I'm a Hal Jordan guy. I just am. I mean, he's deeply in my heart. So I was going to do that no matter what. But Jeff's pitch to me was that Green Lanterns was the progressive Green Lanterns book, or Green Lantern book. That's the book where the future is going to be established, where things are going to change. And I got to co-create Jessica Cruz, so she's a little bit mine, and it would be an opportunity to develop her a little bit more as well. What do you think about that? How do you see Green Lanterns as the progressive Green Lantern book, as opposed to Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps being whatever that is?
Because I think, you know, the Hal book is more about the core, and I think that's a good direction, but it's about them enforcing the laws, like they're good at it, right? And I think and the laws sort of work in a guy like Hal's favor, right? But I think for Jessica and Simon, you know, partially because of who they are, you know, Simon is a Muslim guy in America, and Jessica is a Latin American, that they deal with different things than Hal does. And I think that's what makes it interesting. And they're younger too, right? So they've got a different life. I think Hal he's become the guy who represents the core in its ideals and all those sort of things. And you don't need to play Hal as questioning what they do anymore, right? Like Hal gets it. This is what they do, and he believes in everything. And I think that's the cool thing about Jessica and Simon, is you can have them deal with bureaucracy, and you can have them deal with things about the core that might not be great, you know, and to question it. And yeah, I think so that allows you to do different kinds of stories. Like, they should be the rookies. I think that's you know, and they shouldn't be 100% competent either, right? Like they should screw up. I don't think Hal screws up anymore. Hal's challenges are more like, you know, he has to keep the order that he helped establish, and a lot of I think the book that you guys do with Robert, it's, you know, you've got all the really good lanterns. They're really good at this. Guy is a jerk, but he's good at this. John is exceptionally competent at this. And that book is all about them dealing with the bigger things because they're good at it, right? And this, I think, Green Lantern should be about learning to do this. You know, like it doesn't have to be like, oh, I just made my first new construct and it's really great. Like, but it can be about them learning about the limitations of what the core can do, you know, and what it represents.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. It's just Green Lantern students. I love that, and learning, you know, and at the end of the day, I wonder if these two characters are going to learn that the Guardians do have wisdom after all, because there's so, I mean, Hal Jordan went through decades of continuity, questioning them, tossing his ring at them, saying, no, I'm not going to do this. You guys are wrong. Even killing them at one point, you know, crazy. You know, I assume that, you know, Simon and Jessica are going to have the same questions. They're both obviously, I mean, this is the problem with having characters that are willful and determined. That they're less likely to be obedient. And I guess that's going to be hopefully part of what this book is about, like learning wisdom.
Yeah, absolutely,
you know?
Definitely. And so this two-part arc that I'm doing is sort of a, you know, it's the first arc I did was sort of about the job and about what Green Lantern, what like my premise on what this was going to be. And the second one, I get to do a cop story. Like I want to do a Green Lantern's cop story. And the next one is more about, you know, the bureaucracy, but also about, and then the third arc is really about their relationship. They're friends, but obviously they're, you know, they're partners. They rely on each other, and they're a young guy and a young girl, and what would that mean for to work so closely with someone that you've gotten to know that well, and you know you start to question what kind of relationship do we have. So you know, that's kind of how I want to do it.
You called them a young guy and a young girl, and you left out two words: a young Muslim guy and a young Latino woman.
Right.
Now, how important is that to you in defining their characters, and how do you express that in your stories, or do you plan to? Is that important to you?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, that's what the first arc, I think, you know, the first two-issue story I did was sort of them like they deal with different things on Earth than they do in space. In space, they're space cops, and people go, holy shit, a Green Lantern is here. But on Earth, Simon is a Muslim guy with a record that says that he, you know, was involved in this potentially terrorist thing. And even if he's exonerated, that's still on his resume. It's still there. And Jess has a huge gap in her resume. She lived in the woods, ate squirrels, and, you know, like lived on canned food, and people know that. And I have anxiety disorder myself, so I know part of what that is you're afraid that people will think you can't do the job because you'll freak out. Like they don't really understand what it means to that what you're dealing with. So, and she's also, you know, I mean, I think for her, she lives in Portland, and we don't really know a lot about her heritage as far as that goes. But it definitely, the fact that she's a woman with anxiety is really important for her. And I think, you know, if you do this book and don't deal with those aspects, you're not doing the book service. I think you know, it has to be about that. They're not white guys. They're living a very different America than you know, well, than you and I do, but also than that Hal does. And you know, Green Lantern's always been about that. I mean, you go back to the Green Lantern, Green Arrow stuff, like that's what it is about. John Stewart comes from this idea that at the time when that character was created, black men had a different life than white men did. So it's always been about that. I think it's an important part of the storyline. I know it was Jeff's intent in creating them, that was part of the story. So I try to hit it as much as possible. You know, I think it's also important that they be more than that. Like, I don't want just to be that girl with anxiety, you know? I don't want Simon to be just that Muslim Green Lantern. Like, there's more to them. I mean, you know, I think Simon's history. To me, I write Simon as more like he's kind of a bro dude. You know, he's kind of like he's kind of a jock and he's kind of an aggressive guy and he's kind of self-confident and stuff. And that, you know, that's as much his personality as being Muslim. And he's a family guy too, though. He's basically, I was thinking about this on the airplane a couple weeks ago. I ended up watching, they had the Fast and the Furious movies, a bunch of them. So I just watched them on the airplane. It's like, holy shit, this is where Simon comes from. He's like, it's all about family. Like, it's totally, that's exactly who he is, you know.
Do you guys see how well thought out and well-rounded these characters are because of good writing? I mean, I love that, like, Simon is a fully realized human being to you, and so is Jessica. And it's not just about, you know, certain character traits that are on the outside or anything like that. It's all about what's inside, and that makes us all kind of truly individual. I love hearing you talk about stuff like that. And that makes me say, hey, what's this? Green Lantern number 35. Green Lantern's number 35. Do you have a copy with you?
I do. I have
good.
My comps. DC sent me some, so I got them.
Beautiful. You know what I love about this? Balfunga on the front, and he looks just like the Balfunga that I drew recently in Hal Jordan 23 or 24, something like that. He looks great. Actually, Carlo Barberi souped up his armor quite a bit. I like his version better.
Well, so it's funny because I had pitched this when I originally pitched Green Lanterns. I pitched a Balfunga story, and the week I sent it in, I got the issue that you drew him in, and I was like, oh shit, they use it in. And you made him like, so to me, my Balfunga thing is I read that first Alan Moore story, Mogo Doesn't Socialize, like 25 years ago, and I loved it. I thought it was so great. But to me, Balfunga is a joke. He's an idiot. He's not. But you drew this really fucking scary guy. Like, he was pretty. And Robert wrote him like he was really competent. Like, and it was cool. But I then, once they said, "Oh, we love that story, we want to do it," I had to make it work with what you guys did, which is the cool thing about comics. But me I had to change my pitch to match what you guys did, and it worked better because I had to explain why, you know, you guys had him get busted. He was in the science cells, and you had him be he did something good. I mean, not good, but he basically did something competently. He robbed this fucking vault planet. He got caught, but he did a good job. So I had to figure out how my story worked with yours, and I think it made it better. So I appreciate that part about these shared universe books like that. It's really, it forces you to really think about stuff, which I thought turned out pretty good.
I never read a Balfunga story in my life.
Really?
They told me to do this. I looked up reference. I looked at who drew this originally. This is not Brian Ball. I think Dave Gibbons. Yeah, I found the Dave Gibbons reference.
Yeah, it was their pre-Watchmen stories. Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons. They would do these Alan Moore did these amazing backups for Green Lantern stuff. In fact, it's where all of the color core stuff comes from. It's where Blackest Night and all that stuff comes from. It's from those Alan Moore backup stories. Mm-hmm. But the Balfunga one was the origin of Mogo, basically. And it's really funny. It's a funny story. Balfunga is like, he's this braggart, right? But when you read this book, he kind of starts out as this really, all bravado and braggadocious, and then you realize that he's faking it, which is what I wanted to do. I want to tell the story of why is he faking it, and we find out in this why he fakes it.
How do you like working with Carlo Barberi?
It's cool. So here's the weird thing about doing Green Lanterns right now is there's like a rotating cast of artists. So I'm working with like 5 guys at the same time, which is hard. It's hard because I don't know I tend to write to the artist, which I did on Grayson and I did on Nightwing a lot. Like, I would know who I was writing for, and I would literally say like, "Hey, Mikkel, do this. Like, I want you to do your thing. I know what you'll do." Here I can't do that. So it's really fortunate these guys are so good at their job. So that really helps me. I just have to write a tight script and know that these guys will do their thing on it. So this was my first with Carlo. I think he did a really nice job. I thought of this as much. I was working with Dudu. I can't. He's another artist. He was my first issue, and another one of these artists that did much more realistic stuff. So this isn't what I was thinking because I had seen the other more realistic guys. But I like, that's the cool thing about this. Like, you're getting something, it's collaboration. You're getting something back that you may not have anticipated, you know?
Right. Hey, guys in the live chat, we're going to go through this book together, and then I'm going to turn it over to you guys to ask questions, Q&A. So I saw a few super chats. Thank you. I will remember those questions from the super chats. I will ask those first. I appreciate it. But save super chats and questions until afterwards. I am monitoring the comments, just FYI. But at the end of this, then I turn it over to Q&A, and you guys can ask whatever you want. All right, back to the book. So I'm, by the way, Carlo Barberi is terrific. He took over Impulse for me.
Yeah, right. So he's been around as long as us.
Yeah. So it's pretty neat to see him doing like Green Lantern. It's just like, oh my gosh, here he is, like drawing these characters that I'm really familiar with. So it feels kind of special to me to see him do Balfunga here. And look, I mean, okay, so we open up. Portland, Oregon.
9-panel grid, which
Yeah.
I like to use as this sort of first page because it sets you this rhythm. You know, you read a 9-panel grid slowed down because it's 9 panels, and it has a rhythm. It's the same size, same shot, so that when you flip it and it's a splash, it like I think it hits you a little better. Like it's like, you know.
Hold up the book while you're talking about it. It's kind of story
yeah.
time. I want you to point at things.
Okay, yeah, sure. So here you go. So here's the 9-panel grid page. So it's like you read it kind of slow, right? It's heavy dialogue. It's a lot of character stuff, and it gives you a rhythm, and then you're like, boom! It's a big splash, which is one of my favorite things about comics is that you can control timing by varying the panel size. So yeah, this is, you know, Jessica basically is she's working in the kitchen at this vegan restaurant, and she wants to work as a waitress because she wants to deal with people. And so she's kind of begging for that because the perception of her boss is that she can't handle the stress. And then, of course, she says, I'm ready to do this, and I'm ready to deal with really, you know, pain-in-the-ass customers. And then Balfunga walks in, is basically the shtick. But yeah, so this is, you know, Jessica's trying to do her thing. Balfunga has been looking for her. Kind of the idea, we showed him in the last issue sort of walking across America trying to find a Green Lantern. He knows he needs a Green Lantern for help. But it's under the auspice that he's challenging them to a duel, which is what Balfunga does. So you get to see some fighting. Jess kind of pissed off because he ruined her chances. So this was on page, let's see, 3. I had written in these things where we got, like, Jess makes these a little turtle, cute little turtle, to use as a shield, and then she hits him with a fish. I think it's funny. Like, I was thinking it was totally different. It's funny to watch how Carlo did it. Like, to me, it was like the joke of slapping someone with a fish, but he like kind of went in detail with it and kind of tried to make it work. It's like a serious moment, you know.
Why the turtle?
So one of the things, it's kind of implied by Sam's stuff, but she makes constructs that calm her down. So like all of her constructs are like either cute or they're inspirational figures to her. Like in the first issue, we saw that she creates Wonder Woman sometimes to act as, you know, because Wonder Woman inspires her and sort of fills her with strength. So that's a conceit of that I'm trying to do in this, that each of them kind of has unique. Every Green Lantern has unique constructs that are you know, part of the character, right? Hal makes, you know, pretty standard stuff. Kyle's an artist; he makes really detailed stuff. John makes really architectural stuff. I thought Jess would make things that keep her calm.
I love that idea.
And that Simon would make mechanical stuff mostly, because he's a mechanic. But anyway, so yeah, that was kind of the idea there, which is why she makes a carp like from like a reflecting pool, you know, like
a koi fish.
A koi fish, yeah, exactly. Okay. So yeah, that's the idea.
That's a really great idea. I love this shot of Simon in bed here, like putting his costume on. I think that's really terrific. And you know, I like the way a piece of it is on his shoulder and his symbol is already there, but it's making its way across his body.
Yeah, it's cool. It's a cool idea. Well, so the idea here was, you know, we cut Simon. He's been camping out in the sector house because he got kicked out of his house. So he has to sleep in the Green Lantern sector house, kind of like, you know, it's like sleeping in the basement of your work because you don't have a house to go to. Kind of sad, right? You know. But,
who's he sleeping with? Who's this girl?
So this is this character, Night Pilot, which this will lead to the next arc. Arc after this one. I plan things. I always do this thing, and then I find out like, oh, you're not supposed to. People don't really go for that anymore. But I'm from the Chris Claremont school, where you like introduce an idea, and then 6 issues later you pick it up. Like that's how I was taught to do comics, I guess.
Yeah.
So I do that here. So we introduce Night Pilot. She's a major character coming up, but he meets her on a superhero dating app called Caper, which also we set up for later. But basically, and it's funny, like when this issue came out, people immediately responded to me on Twitter with like, hated that idea or loved it. Like some people were like, oh, superhero dating, that's the stupidest idea I ever heard. And other people were like, that's hilarious. But if you hate it, too bad. It's a major storyline coming out because, you know, they're single people and they're young. They're going to use dating apps, but they have to use superhero ones because it's a lot easier for them to meet other superheroes and date other superheroes, right? So yeah,
that's true.
So yeah. So Night Pilot is this girl he meets, kind of has a couple dates with, and then, you know, as we see, she's sort of like, I'm sorry, man, I can't do this. Like, you're a grown man and you're basically just you know, squatting in this sector house thing. So which bums Simon out. We'll actually see more of this later, like why he's sort of affected by this date not going well for a couple issues to come.
You'd think that she would be more understanding of the circumstances going along with being a superhero.
Well, we also find out is that's not the reason she doesn't want to be with him too. So I don't want to like, she kind of uses that as an excuse, but there's a reason she has for why she sort of turns him down. And this storyline comes back later with Night Pilot. And it's funny, this thing working with artists, I had this somewhat detailed version of what I thought she would look like, and I got it back. I knew that she was kind of like the Rocketeer, you know, and I got it back with this crazy helmet on. It's like, what the hell is that? But then, because I was thinking that she had like a you know, like the Rocketeer kind of thing, whatever. And I get it back, and it's that, and I was like, but that inspired a whole idea. So her origin is now tied to that helmet. So thanks, Carlo. Like that wasn't he put that in there, and I used it because it's really cool.
That's how it works.
And then we jump over to Angara, which is the home of Alvin Sur. We kind of set this up in the first arc that there's this regent who's kind of the president, worked with the Green Lanterns, and that since Alvin Sur has died and passed his ring on to Hal, that there had been like this civil war on their planet, and kind of made up some stuff, but I also pulled some stuff from some old Marv Wolfman and Len Wein issues of Green Lantern. So these characters are from the first arc, and they will come back again. The next arc is all about this murder case. But yeah, I love and one of the things too, you know, working with artists, that I wanted to do, I was going to do a space book. I kind of wanted to do a planet in here that was a different kind of tech. I think there's a tendency for DC stuff to kind of look like that 50s American sci-fi tech. Mm-hmm. And we talked about, I was like, well, let's do like, you know, like heavy metal European artists space tech. So her armor is kind of really based on that, inspired by that. Carlo did this kind of interesting, like almost Roman kind of thing with it, which I wasn't thinking at all, but I kind of like it. But yeah, so we get a little murder story. That's a subplot, you know. Again,
show that armor. Yeah, I like it.
But I did find out that, you know, like people were like, wait, is this a subplot? Like, is this important? I'm learning that kind of readers have changed a little bit in the way that they consume their superhero comics, so which is interesting. But here's where I kind of have to tie it to what you guys did with the you had the Sephia Raiders, the pirate crew that he had, so I had to tie it to your stuff.
Thanks.
But yeah, so then no problem. It was fun. It was actually it's a great exercise to have to do that and sort of think on your feet and change your story to meet the shared universe. And so this is the idea. Jess is going after Balfunga because he challenged her to a duel, but she realizes pretty quickly that he's not into it, that he's faking it. And she knows, because if you have generalized anxiety, you know when someone's just going through the motions, because that's definitely what you do when you're having anxiety. But and then this is an interesting thing too. When I was thinking of this, you know, I was kind of thinking that she had this giant cartoon rifle, like this kind of silly, like Elmer Fudd gun, you know. But I got this very very serious rifle out of it from Carla, and I was like, you know, that makes more sense because she used to be a hunter. She was in the woods doing this stuff, right? She would know how to make a really serious gun.
She's not being funny.
Right, exactly. Yeah. But yeah, so then this kind of sets up our many-page fight scene with Balfunga wrecking shit, which I love. Like, to me, you don't get enough of that sort of Kirby action in comics anymore. Like the massive overswing and because it's all about the dynamics of the action, right? And Carlo does that really well. I don't like super literal action. Like, I don't want to see the fist connect. I want to see like the massive over punch and like the way Kirby did it, you know. So we kind of do that here. Let's see. But yeah, so then you find out that Balfunga was just trying to lead them into his Cosmo cruiser, his spaceship. He wants to talk to them, and he knows that everyone on Earth has cell phones, and they'll take pictures of him. So he's been trying to get them into the Cosmo Cruiser because he needs to tell them about what's happened to him. And this is where we connect to your story. He was in the science cells, and everybody found out that he kind of, you know, he turned on them like he was a rat, snitch.
Yes, this is what was supposed to happen. This is great.
Yeah. So he starts. He was. The only thing that kind of kept Balfunga from getting killed was Balfunga's reputation as being the guy, you know, he says he won all these duels. That's what he's, you know, and you start to find out like that's not true. He just said that. That was all. It was a way for him to, it was like an armor that he created to protect himself from much scarier people. Which also is a theme that I kind of want to play around with in Green Lantern is that, you know, when you set something in space, like inherently, space is like the harshest place you can be. It's, you know, everything would be a battle for resources. Everything would be a battle for just air. And so I want my whole arc to kind of be about the harshness of living in space, you know, which you see here. And that's kind of, you know, Balfunga's thing is mostly out of desperation, you know.
Yeah.
And then he gets his ass kicked by every alien he said he ever beat, which this goes back to the Alan Moore story. So the first time ever you get to see Klobobud and Rivera with his 18 arms and Rustang, Vindictive, which are all ones mentioned by Balfunga when he first appears. So that was cool. I was so proud of that. I was like, oh, most people didn't remember that part. Oh well. So, but yeah. So this is his admission about, you know, he was getting his ass kicked in prison and he was pretty sure he was going to die. And then this lawyer comes and says she can help him. And this is where we introduce Singularity Jane, who's so basically the structure of the story was very purposely. It's a Coen Brothers movie. In Coen Brothers movies, there's always a dumb criminal, who picks up and gets involved with real bad criminals, like actual scary.
A very smart criminal who makes an offer to them.
Exactly, and that's what this is. So this is my Coen Brothers moment where he meets this lawyer and she says, I'll get you out, but you have to do something for me. And he sees it as no other choice. So he takes it, thinking it'll be some physical prize he has to give her. And that's when he realizes what she actually wants is for him to kill his father. Thanks. And when we first meet Balfunga in the Alan Moore story, he says that he's the son of Boff the Unkillable.
Look at Boff the Unkillable.
This is the first time we see Boff.
Oh, hold that up. People have to see Boff the Unkillable here. Look at this old man. That's so sad.
Yeah. So, and Balfunga was always bragging about this old man, and we see that, you know, Balfunga, that Boff is a mean old bastard and survived, certainly, but he's diminished now, you know, he's and the price that he had to pay was to kill him.
It's going to happen to all of us. We're all going to be diminished eventually.
Totally. Yeah, and this kind of goes back to that theme I was so interested in, which is the harshness of life, you know, in space and how survival, what it would do to us, I think, you know. So, of course, then the idea is, you know, John immediately is like, Balfunga is full of shit. And we set that up in your story, in the story that you guys did, was that John does not believe anything Balfunga ever says. In fact, he totally hates the guy.
Yep.
So John dismisses Balfunga's claim out of hand, which, and it's just like, this guy is a piece of shit, just bring him in. But then we find out, you know, Balfunga was telling the truth. Like this woman, whatever she is, really is coming after him. And the whole next issue will deal with that part of it. Because it seems like she's just a lawyer. And then I don't want to ruin anything, but she's not just a lawyer. She's a super scary bad guy. And we see that on the last page where she gives this guy a kiss and all that's left is his skin.
Just, yeah, he's just on the ground. Like she says, hey, I want a kiss. And then.
Yeah, and he's.
All women do that, though. All women do that to men. That's just reality. Except for my wife. My wife.
No, of course.
Never.
Yeah, very sweet.
Wonderful. That's fabulous. I love it.
Yeah, and hopefully, you know, one of the things I've been trying to do too is I think a lot of comic book stories, there's a tendency to make everything 6 issues so it works for the trade. And I wanted to do a bunch of shorter stories. So the first 2 arcs of this are 2 issues apiece. Because it kind of breaks up, I think, this standard rhythm that issues are. It also gives more starting points for readers. Hopefully it doesn't give them more dropping off points. Hopefully it just gives more and more starting points. You know, 1 and 2 issue story arcs is something I've kind of been super interested in doing. I was trying to do it on Nightwing too, but the way the bat books tend to be scheduled, it almost demands them to be longer because you have these sort of family marks you have to hit. You have to hit, you know, this moment of Batman is undercover or Batman is dressed in a big bat suit, robot bat suit. Like you have to hit those moments, and they come every 6 issues, so it's a little harder. But there you go.
Awesome. Are you happy? You're happy on Green Lanterns? You're going to stay for a while?
I mean, I would like to stay and do a good solid run because I have an ending in mind of kind of what I would like to do with it. And I would like to get to that ending. You know, not the ending of the book, but an ending of a sort of mini novel. I think, you know, like the way Grant Morrison approached X-Men when you were on it, where it's like this is his contained X-Men story. You know,
it's going to last this long.
You're right, exactly, and that's kind of how I'm thinking about it. So,
and then exit stage left.
Yeah, exactly. Leave them want more.
I'm excited about this. I personally, I hope to get to draw one of your Green Lanterns. I'm going to ask tomorrow. I'm going to say, give me one of Tim's scripts. It'd be fun.
I would love to. It'd be great. Yeah.
All right, so now we're going to turn together. What would we do together? First of all, we would do.
We have to do a horror story because, I mean, have you said this before? Is you do superhero stuff and you do it well, but you're mostly a horror artist. And I would say that I'm mostly a horror writer. Really, I mean, I love superhero stuff, but I think we need to do a Green Lantern horror story for sure.
That sounds great. We'll set it up.
Let's do it.
I got an idea. I love the Shark, but we'll leave him. He's the go-to horror Earth Green Lantern villain. That's not who you're thinking of, is it?
No, that's more of a monster. That's not a horror story to me. He's a monster villain, right? He's cool as shit. You draw the hell out of him, but I would want to do like a sort of creepy, like a genuinely scary, like ghost sort of, you know, like a possession demon sort of ghost story. I want to do with it.
Ooh.
Yeah.
We'll talk about it. We'll talk about it after this. Don't tell anyone here.
Okay.
You'll spoil it. All right, so I'm going to open it up now, ladies and gentlemen in the chat. We've got a great audience here, and now it's time to ask Tim questions. I am going to read the chat out loud, and if you guys have anything that you want to ask, I know you guys were asking questions all through our conversation. But now is the time. Now it's appropriate. So the first question is actually, Tim, if you and I were going to do something together, meaning me and you, what would it be?
I mean, I guess it's what you and I were talking about before. We have to do a horror thing together, or Cyberfrog. It has to be one of two.
You've written the Cyberfrog script.
Yeah, I wrote one for you, and I really want you to draw it because it would be like a full circle for my career. So someday you have to do it. If not, we have to do a horror story together, like a legit creepy, you know, some kind of body horror thing, or you know, something like that. I think that would be both our interests. I think ticked off.
Somebody wants to know how you feel about taking over Legion of Superheroes, and if that's something you'd ever want to do.
Oh shit, man! I mean, I love the space stuff. I love sci-fi stuff. that is the hardest property to crack in DC, I think. And I'm sure you've seen how hard it is to make that book relevant, because the fans who love it so much for how crazy it is, and getting the average person to get it is hard. But I love it. The Barry Kitson, Mark Waid one is one of my favorite runs of a DC book at all. So, I mean, it's great stuff. I would really have to think about how to do that book, though.
I feel like you'd have to do them one at a time, because you don't want to overwhelm people.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is, and I talked to Tom King about this once. We're talking about just how the hardest thing about it is the appeal is that there's a ton of superheroes, right? It's a book about a literal legion of characters, which is the appeal. It's unique. The unique part of it is that there's so many of them. The hard part is that you've got to introduce and maintain all these characters in a monthly comic book. It's really, really hard to do. I think that's what it ends up suffering from, you know?
I want to make people care about them. I love Saturn Girl. I would like to do just a Saturn Girl ongoing, but I don't know, whatever. All right, let's see. Here we go. What's that?
She's such a great design. You know, it's such a classic design. I love that design.
Just
all the legions, really. Yeah, it's so simple and so cool.
Okay, Tim, what tune was going through your mind when you wrote the Agent 37 theme song? That's from Jake Meisling.
So the one in issue 16 is Tom King completely did that himself. We had talked about theme song stuff for Dick before that and mentioned that he had one, but Tom is the one that actually wrote it. And Tom wrote that on an airplane. In 4 hours, he wrote that entire script. And he wrote that theme song, and it just came out of his head complete. I don't know how the fuck he did that. He's an amazing weirdo. So you have to ask Tom about what tune it is and make him sing it someday at a panel. Someday, hopefully, Tom will sing it to everyone. That's what I want to have happen.
Hey, Rebirth Mortal Comics says, Tim Seeley, what advice would you give a new comic book writer?
I mean, I get asked this question a lot, but the thing is, you need to write a lot. A lot of times when people ask me, is like they want to write comics, but they don't want to have to write the scripts. They just have a lot of ideas, and ideas don't mean shit, unfortunately. So if you want to be a comic writer, write as many scripts as possible. Get good at it. And the other thing is kiss the ass of every comic book artist you meet. Because
and it goes the other way around, too.
It does to a degree, but people will look at your art. People won't look at a script, you know? Like, that's you need to give, if you want to show what you can do, you need to give an editor a comic you wrote, but it has to be a comic. No one wants to read your script. It's just the way it is. So, so if you can get an artist to work with you, that's really, really important. And so, you know, I used to do this. I would not troll in the new sense of the word, but I would run around DeviantArt looking at artists, and I would email these people and be like, hey, I just was looking at your stuff. If you ever want to talk about working on something, and I would build all these relationships, and I ended up using most of those people on my indie stuff. So, yeah, buy drinks for artists a lot.
Christian Benson says, Tim, this isn't a question, just a statement. Thank you for what you've done with Nightwing.
Oh, thank you. You're welcome.
Infinity Koi says, oh no, I'm sorry, just asked that one. I'm stalled here. James says, what do you hope to see in the upcoming Nightwing movie?
Well, I mean, that's tough. I think I hope they put Raptor in it so I get a nice fat movie check. But what I think is more important is that they have to figure out a way to tell his story and contain Batman, but it can't be about Batman, right? That's going to be the hardest part, is how do you tell a Nightwing story and it has to involve the fact that he used to be Robin. How do you do that and still make his arc in one movie, a 3-act structure, work? I think that's the hardest part. I have faith in Chris McKay. I think he knows the difficulty of doing this, you know, of doing a character whose origin is just being a sidekick, you know.
Somebody wants to know what your thoughts are about a hack and slash revival.
Wait, so I did a book called Revival. So are they talking about a crossover, or because we are doing a new hack slash book? Issue 2 just came out last week. I'm not writing it. It's by Teeny Howard, but I'm editing and, you know, serving as cover artist guy. But yeah, I'm always bringing back hack slash is like the thing I did that people seem to care about the most. Like, you don't get to choose. It's just that happens to be the one I did that people care about. So so I'm always bringing it back. It'll probably always be around in some form.
Okay, so what was your favorite part about working on the Batman Eternal project, and was the weekly series a difficult task? Thank you, Bowman's World, for that question.
Yeah, it was super difficult, but it was also, I think the best part about it, it was like taking a graduate level course in writing. Scott Snyder was like heading the show, and so I get to see how he works, how he plots, and then James Tynion is a machine. He's like just a totally unbelievable plot guy, because the hard part about that book is that you were writing separate chapters at the same time. So I'd be writing part 38 at the same time as someone was writing 26, basically. And so you had to have a really good sense of what their story was about and how everything was going to fall in sequence. But it was, I mean, I learned more from that job than I think I've learned from anything. You're reading a bunch of other people's scripts and you're watching them basically show run like a TV show. So yeah, it was great. Super, super educational experience.
Ashland Reaver wants to know, do you have a scythe on your wall behind you?
I do, yeah.
What's
my
that
brother
about?
bought it. Here, see, I can show it to you.
Oh, it's awesome.
Yeah. So in my book Revival, the main character uses a scythe in the first issue to chop off an old lady's head. And my brother, who lives up in Wisconsin, bought that for me at a yard sale. It's a like, 50, 60-year-old scythe, I think, or maybe even older. So we mounted it to the wall and just hope that we're never walking by it when an earthquake strikes, because that's how I'm gonna go in my Final Destination death scene. Like I'm just setting up this death scene for myself.
This is a simple question that everyone knows the answer to, but this person would like it answered, so I'm going to ask you. He says, ask if he has to commute to Burbank often as a DC writer, or if it's all done remotely.
Well, I don't do it often, but I do have to go to Burbank probably. I mean, last year I've been to LA 5 times last year. So you do have to go. I live in Chicago, as you can see from the flag on my wall is a Chicago flag. But yeah, you do have to go. I have to go for summits and I think it would even be, and Ethan probably can attest this, I wish I was closer sometimes because it was so much easier to know what's going on and pitch for work if I was close. And I think West Coast writers have a advantage because they're close. But I go at least probably once every 2 months to LA.
Was it always your intention to make Raptor Nightwing's greatest villain, or did that just happen along the way? Thank you, Jake Meisling, again. Great question.
So it was my assignment from Jeff Johns. When I went out for my rebirth meeting, each of us had meetings with Jeff, and he kind of gave us a rough idea. And he told me the first thing I had to do was I had to give Nightwing a good villain. He said Nightwing doesn't have any iconic villains. So we kind of kicked around some ideas, and Jeff said, if Nightwing is about mentorship, then his villain has to be a guy who thinks he's a better mentor than Batman. So that was the sort of nugget that we had to grow from. And I think, kind of got lucky that Raptor worked so well, and it was through the work of my 2 editors, Rebecca Taylor and Dave Vilgod, working with me on like, how do we make the ultimate Nightwing bad guy? Because it's hard as shit to do. Like he doesn't have that. He doesn't have a Spider-Man rogue gallery. He doesn't have a Daredevil, gallery like that. So we had to do it ourselves.
I'll do 2 more questions and I'm going to let you go. This is interesting because I don't know what he's talking about. So you'll know.
Okay.
Nightmare Ink Majesty says, any interesting or weird stories you feel like sharing from when you worked on Hoax Hunters?
Oh, well, so Hoax Hunters is a book that my brother does with his friend Mike Morisi. I'm obviously pretty good friends with my brother, but Mike Morisi is a guy who lives here in Chicago. And so I basically just helped them figure out how to work with Image is basically my job, and I did covers. But yeah, that's totally my brother, Steve. So sometimes people think I wrote it. I did not. That's totally Steve. Comics runs in the blood in our family, so Steve kind of got stuck being a comic book guy, even though he just wanted to do art for real. So, but yeah, it's a good book. Check it out. It's fun. It came up from Image, and then Heavy Metal Magazine put out some trade paperbacks.
I'm going to give you a break from comic book questions here.
Sure.
You're from Chicago. This is Mystical Green Beanie. He wants to know, real important, hot dogs with or without relish?
Oh, man, you got to have the relish. So the Chicago-style hot dog, it's really important that you do all of the things. It has to be the relish, the pepper, the onions, the mustard. It's got to be those things. It's got to be all of them. And it's a perfect hot dog. Even when I grew up in Wisconsin, my favorite hot dog place was a Chicago hot dog place. It's probably why I moved here. So yeah, you have to do the relish. Don't be stupid. Don't eat it plain. Don't eat it with ketchup. Don't be an idiot. You got to eat it just the way we do it here. Don't do it any other way.
It's the Chicago way.
Yeah, it's just how we do it. We get people murdered. We eat hot dogs. It's what we do.
Tim, thank you so much for spending some time here on Comic Artist Pro Secrets. My fans appreciate it. Your fans appreciated it. I mean, everyone had a good time. The comments are going ballistic. I'm going to post this. It'll be available to rewatch in about 30 minutes. Thank you for your time and your expertise.
Thanks for having me, Ethan. No, I appreciate it, man. It's always good to talk to you.
Okay. Just have a good night. Guys, leave comments below. Please subscribe. If you haven't subscribed yet, hit the bell for notifications. And thank you so much for all your support for this channel. We'll see you again next week. Thanks a lot. Bye.